Continuing Likutei Halachot, and we're discussing the concept of eating in the morning before you pray. Are you allowed to eat or drink before you pray in the morning?
It's a different story, but
Yes, you can eat. You have to
Eating,
drink. Only drink.
eating you can't. Drinking you shouldn't unless it's water is allowed, and if you need coffee, right? But Rav Nachman was very stringent in this area, based on the Zohars, which are very intense, and they speak a lot about the fact that, let's say for instance, whenever there's something kodesh, whenever you have something holy in your life, you always have something which is opposite it, which is fighting against it. So we know that your ability to pray comes from your power of speech. The ability for you to have tefillah that hits the mark, that gets your prayers answered, is dependent on your power of speech. Now, what gives your speech the power of speech? It's the kedusha that's in your speech. It's the holiness that's in here. It's the truth that's in your speech. But what happens when you eat or you drink before you pray? So Rav Nachman explains that the klipot dress themselves up as the edible organs. Your trachea and your stomach and your jugular veins. They are actually, when Yosef was imprisoned, where was he imprisoned with? The steward, the baker, and the butcher. Right? The wine steward, the baker, and the butcher. Wine is like blood, that's the jugular veins. The butcher is bread, that's like the stomach. And where does the, what's the last one? Butler. What does a butler do? Butler, butcher, what is it?
Wine. Oh, so bread, wine, and butter.
What does a butler do? What is a
well, it takes your hand. I mean, your
what kind of butler you have?
your luggage, no?
Butler?
Seriously.
What's the last one? You have the wine steward, you have the butcher, and you have the baker. Butcher, baker. Butcher, baker.
Winemaker.
Winemaker.
Deliverer.
So 1 second. Oh no, butcher was the guy who was imprisoning all of them. He was the butcher. Okay, so you had the baker, you had the wine steward,
The butler.
and the butler.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
Who's the butler?
so there's. Here we go. Ready? The trachea, the windpipe, carries fluids by air. This corresponds to the cupbearer, the drink. Then you have the esophagus, which is the food pipe. This carries food from the mouth to the stomach. This corresponds to the baker. I actually have a stand under here. I'm just not trying to show it. And then you have the jugular veins that pass through the neck. They're responsible for draining blood. This is concept of the butcher. Okay, so these are the three things. Now what happens is when you eat prior to prayer, so then when your words actually come out of your throat, so Kabbalistically the koach of those words gets entrapped by those three klippas. And they then pass it over to Paro, who represents your neck, the back of your neck. That's why Paro, if you flip the letters around, it's Oref. So therefore the Zohar is very stringent about not eating or drinking before you pray, stam, period, and especially before you pray in the morning shachrit.
What about halacha?
According to halacha, you're not allowed to eat, but you are allowed to drink water and coffee without milk.
But according to the Zohar, it says you're.
So we just said that.
But why do they differentiate each other?
You mean why is Zohar different than the halacha? So this is
How come the halacha different in the Zohar? There's something different.
unbelievable. Your turn, Betty. He asked the same question as you.
Oh yeah?
Robert, you want to get in on this? I'm good. I already asked it. Okay, the answer is like this. There is something called letter of the law, and there is something called beyond the letter of the law. Okay? Kabbalah goes beyond the letter of the law, and halakha says what you need to do. Because
The bare minimum.
the bare minimum what you have to do that Hashem says is good. It's good. However, when a person grows in their service of Hashem and they want to do more, so the Zohar explains, by the way, there are very deep spiritual things that are taking place in your life at all times. We are going to give you insight into those different things, and this is one of those things.
The truth within the truth.
Yes, that'd be like the truth of the truth. There you go. Nice, Daniel. Very good. Okay?
But leave us to judge what we want.
Right, like for instance, because we're all Sephardic here. So, just for history's purpose sake, it's good to know. Why are you making a face? You don't think I'm Sephardic? My skin isn't. Oh. All right, Edom Mizrahi, whatever. Okay, it's all good. Wow, look at this. Straight out of
Compton.
straight out of left rack. How you doing?
Shmuley, good.
Shmuley, nice to meet you. How you doing, Shmuley?
Great. How are you? 10, 20 minutes, and then we got
Wow, you guys are pretty cool.
No, but we came tonight.
You guys doing that everywhere you go tonight, or is this? Okay. Okay, come get a seat and enjoy. Okay, so you guys probably have heard of the Ben Ish Chai.
No. Who's sitting?
You.
Somebody? Nobody? You.
You consider. I'm pretty sure the Bukharians were actually very connected to the Ben Ish Chai when they were back in Bukhara. Yeah, in the Chida. So he took halacha and he paskined halacha based on Zohar. This is the Ben Ish Chai.
But you can't do that.
Right. So he held that you could, and he's one of the biggest poskim that ever lived. So, and the majority of Sephardim followed him for a long time. Rav Avadia Yosef came along, and he said, "We are not all Kabbalists. We are Jews. And if somebody wants to be a Kabbalist and take this on themselves, good, but you can't expect the whole Jewish population to follow halacha according to Kabbalah." And he says, we follow the Shulchan Aruch. Whatever the Shulchan Aruch says, that's what we do. So what he did was he pretty much went back to basics. Okay? And then if anybody wants to take on themselves certain things, kol hakavod, you do it. Okay? No, you can't make your own thing. You have to be a very big, these are some of the biggest people that ever lived.
Yeah, but you see Ashkenazim halacha and you see some.
It's not about making your own thing. Halacha means what does Hashem want you to do. There's just a basic divide in that area about what Hashem wants you to be doing. So
yeah, but you can make him into both. You can follow both.
Listen,
you can be like Shafar Ashkenaz.
Martin Luther King or whatever, then you're sure. You can Shafar Ashkenaz yourself. Everybody here wants that clarity, not confusion, okay? So therefore, when you eat or you drink before you pray in the morning, the Zohar says that those words that come out of your mouth get trapped. And he says this is the reason why physiologically you feel more tired when you come to pray after you eat or drink. It's because, in fact, the klipot are sapping your energy. They're sapping your life force. So therefore, if you want to have a lot of koach, a lot of energy when you pray, don't eat or drink before you pray. But if you teach a class, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'ro.
Amen.
I'll tell you something. When I'm drinking in the morning, this is what give me koch. I don't eat, no coffee, only water.
So according to halacha, you're fine.
Oh yeah?
Yes, you're fine.
You're
good, don't worry.
Without water, I'm
You're nothing.
no.
You're amorphous.
What about coffee?
My body will not.
So you're allowed to drink coffee according to halakha. According to the Zohar, you shouldn't drink anything. So you have to see where you're holding. Am I capable of praying without coffee? If you are, try it out.
If there's some tzaddikim who ate before they pray and drank before they pray.
Okay, we're just saying Rav Nachman's shita. This is what Rav Nachman holds based on many Zohars. Now it's going to continue. It's going to say like this. The remedy for the dryness of the throat is tanit, fasting. And by depriving yourself of food and drink, so it's based on these deep Kabbalistic principles that pretty much what's happening is the klipot, they are taking only from the back. They can't take from the front of Kedusha because it's too intense for them. They get burned up by it. That's the reason why Satan, or let's say the Nachash, couldn't approach Adam because Adam represents the front of Kedusha. Whereas Chava represents the back of Kedusha because she's the female. Right, the Acharayim. So the Acharayim, the backside, is always the most vulnerable. That's why even in the Shulchan Aruch and Halacha, there's very specific laws about when you go to the bathroom and you take a two, how you do it, and specifically what you use. And he says, and it's interesting because it's Halacha, but he says you can't use a rock, when you're doing these things because of kishuf, right? So he speaks about these things, that there's such a thing as when the backside is vulnerable, right? And that's just a physical manifestation of that. But spiritually, there is something called the back of Kedusha. This is what's vulnerable, okay? When you have dinim against you, Rav Nachman teaches a way to nullify the judgments against you immediately. Meaning a judgment doesn't have to be something so severe as, like, let's say I got into an accident, chas v'shalom, like something very severe. You can just be having a bad day. You're just having a bad day. It means you have dinim against you. You have judgments against you. So Rav Nachman says, how do you nip that in the bud immediately? Just like kind of quickly sever yourself from this difficulty, whatever you're going through, by starting to fast. Because what happens is you actually protect the back of Kedusha and they have nothing to get life force from. So this gives you enough koach to start over again.
For how long?
So we're going to talk about it in a second. Okay. Because what happens is that when you deprive of all food and drink, you actually, so to speak, you, what's the word? You draw water from chasadim. As opposed to the klipot, that they are drawing sustenance from the back of the kedusha, and they're giving you gevurot, which is dinim. By not eating and not drinking before you pray, you actually draw down chasadim, which is positive spiritual energy, which protects you from negative energy and gives you life force. And that comes from the mind. So Benny, you're going to like this. I thought of there's a physical manifestation of this. Everything, yeah. Nothing. If you can. So when it's not raining, what do? We fast. We fast and we pray. So what do we think? We think because it's an agricultural land, Israel, we need rain to survive. We're trying to show Hashem. We want to do tshuva. We do that by saying we're not eating, we're not drinking, we're crying out to X, Y, and Z. Or maybe there's a deeper chiddush here. That when you don't eat, you draw down waters from the sky. Like we're learning here that when you don't eat, you draw down moisture from the mind.
That's why we fast sometimes, right?
Thank God, you got it. Yes, very good.
Yeah, John.
EMT student over here.
You become like an angel.
Yes.
Angels don't eat.
Okay, good.
We're higher than angels.
Okay, take it easy over here. I see you got juiced up by your Coca-Cola over there. Take it down for a second, okay? So, you hear the analogy? We're trying to draw down moisture from the mind so it enters into our throat. So when we speak, there's kedusha in our words and we have life force and energy. We do the same exact thing collectively as a people when we want rain to come down from the sky. It's very interesting. You don't understand?
No,
Okay, is everything okay? Okay. Therefore, one is forbidden to eat and drink before prayer because he needs to deprive himself of food and drink before praying Shachrit in order to safeguard his emunah. Why? Because Rav Nachman teaches that emunah is prayer. So therefore, if your prayer is blemished because you're eating and drinking before you pray, it means your emunah is blemished. Because emunah is prayer. That's why there is a Jewish law that's called a fast of hours. It's called Tanit Sha'ot. People do this often. You don't fast for the whole day. You fast for a period of the day, and it really counts. It's a mitzvah. It's called a fast of hours.
What, like,
For the morning time, I take upon myself to fast from when I get up until, let's say, midday or something. Okay. It depends who you ask. If you ask the same doctor who told you that, he'll tell you should waste seed every day to make your prostate healthy. So, I got you. Don't worry. I know who you're listening to. Okay? Therefore, every day people go without food by fasting before prayer. By doing so, they draw the spiritual illumination which is associated with fasting. Why? Because it conceals the back of Kedusha. This enables them to extract the faculty of speech. Why? Because the speech, so to speak, is trapped in your neck, Rav Nachman says. Every time before you pray, speech is trapped in your neck, meaning Amunah is trapped in your neck. How do you release the Amunah? How do you release the speech? By not eating and not drinking. And as a result of not eating and drinking, they have no sustenance to keep onto your speech and it gets released. This is the connection between Mitzrayim. Why? Because in Mitzrayim, the whole concept of Mitzrayim is Meitzarim. It's a narrow. Your neck is the narrowest part of your body. in Kabbalistic works, your neck is called Mitzrayim. That's why Paro, if you flip the letters around, it's Oref, it's the back of the neck. Paro lives in Mitzrayim, in your neck.
Wow.
What is that supposed to mean?
I'm bugging
It
out.
means take a knife and chop it off. I'm kidding. Look at his face. What does it mean? The whole goal of every Jew in this world is to connect their head and their heart. Okay? You good with that? There's one thing that's in between your head and your heart. It's your throat. But your throat is very narrow. And narrowness, spiritually, always represents danger. Narrow always represents difficulty and challenges. Meaning, what brings you from your head to your heart is actually difficulty. So that's the positive aspect of it. But on the other hand of it, you have the difficulties are there, and that's why specifically anything that has to do with the throat, whether it is speech or it's eating or drinking, when it's not done properly, is very damaging spiritually. That's what I'm saying. Okay? Prayer itself is synonymous with Emunah, as is known in Kabbalah. And we know that Emunah is perfected through the tikkun of speech. This is the reason why speech in particular is the primary medium of prayer. So he's saying a chiddush. He's saying it doesn't happen to be like we think, of course you pray when you speak. That is what prayer is. He says it didn't have to be. We pray through speech because speech is what fixes prayer. They're connected spiritually.
But what if you don't keep the bris holy?
Okay, so we already spoke about this. This is for another time.
So don't worry.
Okay, good to know. And perfection of speech is achieved by depriving oneself through fasting and breaking one's desire for food. So it's even deeper than not eating. It's breaking that desire for eating. Why? Because the desire for food represents the, so to speak, the klipa of the neck. Whereas the positive, the kedusha of the neck is tefillah. So they're on two opposite ends. Two opposite ends. There was one very big Breslaver who he worked and fixed everything about himself. There was one thing he could not fix no matter what he tried. That was his taiva for food. He was not like a heavy person. He just had this. I resonate very much with this guy.
That's why the shulchan is right next to the aron. The last step you need to get into the aron is to purify yourself from eating.
Right.
Before nothing.
But when you say bracha, because if we don't eat, then we can't say brachot.
Who taught you if you make that sound, it's good, whatever you say? I don't know where you guys learned this from. And then I blew my nose with a tissue. And it's not an issue. So he used to actually give tzedakah every time before he ate, to nullify his taiva for eating. Because Rav Nachman used to teach that anytime you give tzedakah, you nullify your taiva, period, because it's connected to the bread. It rectifies the bread. That's the source of your taivas, whatever. So he used to do this. And it's interesting because Rav Nachman says that Mashiach is going to have to spend his whole life perfecting his prayer. And Rav Natan now is saying that the perfection of prayer comes with the breaking of the desire for eating. Connected. So it sounds like he's going to have to work on his eating habits his whole life. It says, a person must go without food every day before prayer so he can draw the illumination of the inner aspect of fasting in order to rectify the words of his prayer. This corresponds to the tikkun and adornment of emunah. Okay, good. Now, we are going to move into Likutei Mohoran. So just a quick review for the guys who are not here, and then we're going to move forward. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to finish this Torah today. We started it last time. Don't worry, it's good. You need to hear this again. When a person begins to come close to Hashem, serving Hashem, it doesn't mean that I just started putting on tefillin and I just started doing mitzvot. It means earnestly. I'm actually trying very much to be close to Hashem. Meaning, I'm coming and I'm sitting at this table and we're learning Likutei Mohoran and we're trying as best as we can to be kosher Yid, to be a kosher Jew, to do things with fire and with happiness and with joy and with awe and with love and with all of these truths, the deepest truths. He says what happens is that they show you rejection.
How is that good for you?
Wait, take it easy. I don't need you to comment after every sentence I say. I need you to listen. It seems to him that he's being rebuffed from every side and from on high, and they're together, all together, preventing him from entering into the service of Hashem. In reality, though, all of this distancing is really being brought closer. Even what appears like is that Hashem is pushing you away from Him at the very moment that you're actually trying to be close, He's really drawing you in. And so one needs very, very great encouragement to keep from being sad. Chas v'shalom, when he sees the passing of many days, even years, and despite his great exertion in trying to be close to Hashem, he is still very distant, and he hasn't even begun to enter the gates of Kedusha. This is a very startling passage. He's saying a guy can be working and toiling for years and hasn't seemingly moved or budged an inch. You haven't even tasted the gates of Kedusha. Still, he says, you should not be despaired at all. And even if you see that you're riddled with crudeness and materialism, you still love shopping for Prada and Gucci, whatever else you guys are into at the table. And on top of that, you're into all of your physical desires for wasting seed, and you can't stop. And video games, Mario Kart, whatever else you guys are playing these days. No, it's the whole game? Nobody's playing that anymore? UFC, okay? Watching UFC and blazing and whatever else you're into in the physical world. Sorry, I got you guys on the wrong night, huh? EMT. So you guys are allowed to. Oh, I thought so. Got it. Okay. And you have confusing thoughts. Whatever it is, all these things that we're all struggling with. He says, whatever holy matter you want to accomplish in the service of Hashem, they thwart you. They stop you. It seems to you as if Hashem is completely ignoring you. He has no desire whatsoever for your service because he sees that you, meaning you see, that you repeatedly scream and you beg and you plead for Hashem to assist you in your life, and despite all of this, you're still so distant. It therefore seems to you as if Hashem is completely ignoring you, not turning to you at all, because Hashem doesn't want you. The words on this page are searing with realness. I can't tell you how much people feel this and don't talk about it. And they end up just stopping because they can't take it anymore. And if only they'd hear this one lesson, they could make it all the way. Surely, concerning all of this, a person needs great encouragement. A person has to encourage himself me'od, very much, and pay no attention whatsoever to any of this. For in truth, all of the distancing he is experiencing, whether it is all of his lackings or his failings, whether it's his inability to get married or to have children, his inability to make parnasa, his inability to work on all of his taivas, his inability to whatever it is that you're struggling with, to feel close to Hashem, to feel that Hashem is helping you in your life, whatever it is, you should know that all of that distancing is only to bring you closer. It's actually itself is bringing you closer.
Because in order for a person to go up, it first must.
But he's saying, in fact, the going down is actually going up. We just don't understand that. And all this aforementioned things we just spoke about happened to every tzaddik who ever lived, and I heard it explicitly from their mouths. It seemed to them that Hashem was not paying attention or hearing them at all, despite the fact that they were pleading and seeking and searching every day for Hashem. They still felt so distant. And had they not encouraged themselves in the thing that I'm telling you right now, they would all have remained at their original place. You never would have heard of Rav Ovadia Yosef. You never would have heard of the Ben Ish Chai, or Rashi, or the Ramban, or the Rambam. You would have never heard of Moshe Rabbeinu, or David HaMelech. All of these people that we revere, it's because they all had one thing in common, that no matter what happened to them, and he's saying they all had the same stuff. We all think we have the worst problems. Everybody thinks they have the worst problems. Rav Nachman saying, I heard it from the mouths of tzaddikim themselves. Every single person had the same problems. The same intensity of problems. So what stopped one person and what made another person become the tzaddik that we all revere? This guy never gave up. And they merited what they merited. And so he says, as a rule, ahuvi achi, my love, my beloved, my brother, is to be very strong and courageous. You need to strengthen yourself, get a grip on yourself. Do not be concerned to pay attention to these things at all. And even if you're very, very distant from Hashem, to the extent that you're sinning every moment, he says, even with this, you should know that each and every moment that you make any movement to detach yourself a little bit from Gashmiut, from the physical world, from your physical lust, from your physical desires, any little tiny movement is extremely great and precious to Hashem. Even if the shift is very minuscule. He says in the upper world, you're running thousands of miles. And he says this fact you should rejoice over greatly and constantly encourage yourself with happiness. He says because depression is mazik me'od me'od. It is very, very damaging.
Of course, if you're depressed and you don't have a munah.
There you go. And no, once a person wants to enter into a service of Hashem and he becomes depressed, chas v'shalom, this immediately itself becomes a great avera. Why? Because the Zohar says explicitly that depression, atzvut, is the sitra achra. Meaning we think of the sitra achra as some negative spiritual forces which are hovering in the universe. And the Zohar says it's not. You know what the sitra achra is? It's called depression. It's crazy, no? It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Mr. Depression.
Depression.
Is Mr. Depression.
Mr. Depression, exactly. Mr. Depression. Okay, so that's where we ended. Now we're going to continue. So listen, everybody listen. There's a lot of very important things we're going to say right now. We all need this encouragement. Please turn your phone off. Oh, good. And what do you... Yeah, okay, good.
Don't talk.
Yeah, don't talk, just listen. Listen to what we're going to say. I'm going to read you the notes, which I don't usually do because they're all gold, okay? V'tzarich liyot akshan gadol be'avadat Hashem. A person needs to be extremely stubborn when he wants to serve Hashem, in truth. Livli haniach et mikomo. That you refuse to desert your place. What is he speaking about? So he says like this. Rabbi Nachman is going to explain that being stubborn means that you're tenacious and you're unyielding. You know a guy who wants to open a business and he started from nothing and he goes in with everything that he has and everybody's against him, but he doesn't want to end up like his parents and he doesn't want to end up like his community and he just wants to do whatever he can to mamish make it out. Like the whole world is against him, but he's going, tenacious, no matter what, no matter how many falls, he never gives up. And then we hear about him 40 years later when he created this unbelievable thing.
Called Microsoft.
Okay, good. It's called Everybody Who Ever Succeeded. Rav Nachman says, why do you think it's any different in your spiritual life? It's the same exact thing. Even more so. Kal v'chomer, that's the physical world. Spiritually, you need to be just as tenacious and just as unyielding. And listen to the words that he says. Never giving in to God. Never giving in to Hashem. Yeah, not accepting reality. That's what he's saying. Don't accept your reality. Don't accept because Hashem is doing this to you. This is what it's supposed to be. He says, don't ever do that. Nachum says, never give in to Hashem. Unbelievable. Who says things like that? Never give in to Hashem. And even, listen what he says. What does it mean? Even if a person feels ignored and Hashem is not responding to your prayers for days, for months, for years, he must never stop praying. And even after all his efforts to devote himself to Hashem, he doesn't feel any closer to him at all. He must remain steadfast and stubborn, not to desert his place no matter what obstacle comes his way. I'm not going to tell you the whole story again about me and my cousin, but I will tell you, I did Hibodadut for a very long time, for many days, for many months, not getting any of my prayers answered until my cousin woke up from the dead. Imagine if I would have gave up the day before. Imagine all of us, like we just say, I just can't do this anymore. I can't take it anymore. Imagine if you just waited one more day. One more day. Rav Nachman says, you got to keep going. Because you never know when that day is going to be. And once it breaks, the whole thing breaks. And he says not to desert your place no matter what obstacle comes your way. Vayenu, what does that mean? Me'at miksat avodat sheitchil. Even this little bit of true service of Hashem that you have started, no matter what comes your way, no matter what, don't give up. And he says, remember what I'm telling you very well. Why? You're going to need what I'm telling you very much. You hear what we're saying? Everybody in? You hear what we're saying? He's saying, remember what I'm telling you now. Because anybody who really wants to be close to Hashem is going to experience all these things that we're talking about now. And therefore, you're going to have to remember what I told you to get through it. Meaning a person who doesn't have this eitzah, he doesn't have this encouragement, he's never going to be able to make it. He's never going to be able to get over the hump. Even myself. And I have a very, very strong will. And I don't know anybody who has a stronger will than I do. I'm not like necessarily gifted in any other way, but I never give up on anything. And still me myself was very close to giving up on myself in this area of spirituality. It is so hard. It is so hard. And if I didn't get encouragement from Rav Lazer Brody and from Rav Moshe Dror and from Rav Shalom Arush, from Rav Kramer, I wouldn't have made it. I don't think I would be living, let alone made it spiritually. I don't think I'd be living. So you need to remember what he's saying. You just don't give up. No matter what, you just never give up. And it just is going to turn. It's going to turn. So he says like this. It's important to note, Rav Natan writes, many people who had already begun serving Hashem told me that more than anything else, it was this Eitzer of Nachman said about being stubborn and tenacious, which encouraged them to overcome all the obstacles and return time and time again to learning and to praying and to doing what they need to be doing. From the Rebbe's advice, they drew strength to carry out their devotions thousands of times throughout their life. Meaning Rav Nachman is saying, take this Eitzer and write it down and stick it in your pocket and look at it every day because you're going to need it. Even in the face of ridicule and rebuke. And specifically with what we're trying to do together, we're going to need it, okay? However, and I actually had this question. As I was reading this piece, I was thinking to myself about how Rav Nachman says elsewhere in the Likutei Mohoran, you should never force the issue. So which one is it? That seems like a complete contradiction. You should never force the issue with Hashem. And at the same time, he's saying now, you should never give up on whatever it is that you want. So which one is it? So Chaim Kramer actually is machav into the question. And this is what he says. Rav Nachman elsewhere strongly opposed being obstinate and impatient. Right? He speaks many places about the curse of impatience and how every error that man ever had came from impatience. And they list all of them. There it's explained that whenever something came up to which the Rebbe had to attend to, he would take care of it without delay, whether attending to a material concern or fulfilling some spiritual task or devotion. He would deal with an amazing speed. Meaning whenever he had to do something, it was like this. I go to the mikveh, he flew in and he flew out. I go to help somebody, he did it quickly. Whatever he did quickly and he was done. So they asked him, why do you do everything so quick? Like, take it easy. Why don't you maybe wait a day, X, Y, and Z? So his response was, who knows what obstacles, outer or inner, you will face if you leave it until later. Meaning, when you feel the inspiration to do something, go do it. Because as soon as you hop, this is a good idea, and you start to contemplate it, you know who else realizes you're contemplating it? Satan. Satan. So do it immediately. You want to go do a good thing? Start. Do it now.
Not now.
Then when? There you go. And the listener of Nachman says, this is a very deep thing. It's very important that you know this as well. Man's world consists only of the present. You know what that means?
You only have right now.
That's it. This is the only thing in the world that exists. Is right now.
And now we don't have it.
And now you don't have it. And now you have this. And now you don't have it. Now you don't have it. Now you have it.
So that's what it means when Rav Nachman says that everything is renewed. You have to constantly renew yourself. You have to constantly be.
Yeah, that's right. Everything is renewed at every moment. Everything is new.
Holding on to something in the past, it's actually shakir because it's an existence.
Right, exactly. And when do you get sad? When you're thinking about the
Future.
Or past.
past. And when do you get worried? When you're thinking about the future. And what does Rav Nachman say? You should never be scared or sad because those things don't exist. You only have right now. You only have right now. By the way, you should know, I went to school for psychology. This is the number one most effective tool to help people with depression and anxiety, is to get them to focus on the present.
And that also means focusing on the good. Because the only thing we have is right now. Therefore, everything,
You only got one shot. Sorry, I had to do it.
everything in the past, everything in the future, if it doesn't exist, there's no good there.
Right,
It doesn't exist.
right. That's also why it says the Shekhinah is only within your four amot, meaning right now. Beyond that, he doesn't exist. All you have is now. So Rav Nachman always lived his life like that. If something came up, he had an idea to do something, he just did it. Why? Because he didn't think to himself, I'll do it tomorrow, because tomorrow didn't exist in his mind. Like literally. And he said that all the greatest tzaddikim lived like this. He said there was not one great tzaddik that you heard about that felt that there was tomorrow. Okay? So these are very big pearls of wisdom that we should be living with. Yeah? Don't wait till tomorrow. And yet, at the same time, if the Rebbe saw that with all his efforts he was still not succeeding, that there was something that was stopping him from completing the task, he was always patient and relaxed. He would never force the issue or insist they had to be a certain way. So Rav Nachman explains that we need to learn from Rebbe that there is nothing at all that has to be done. You don't have to do anything. You have to try to do everything. But you don't have to do anything. You know what he's saying? It's a very fine point. He's saying you put in your effort and you try to accomplish what you try to accomplish. But if it doesn't happen, it's okay. You don't have to make it happen. It's a sheker. So Rav Nachman, he tried as hard as he can to do something, it didn't work. Okay. Just like move on with his life.
That's giving up.
Yeah, it sounds like it's giving up, right? So that's what we're talking. We're going back and forth. He did it right away. He didn't wait. No tomorrow. Never gave up. Then he saw it didn't happen. He gave up and he didn't care anymore. And he was patient and relaxed. So which one is it?
Do you think that's why Adam sinned? Because he thought the moment, present moment?
Let's see. So he says, there are times when you see that in spite of all your efforts and determination, you cannot seem to succeed in whatever you want. Sometimes you simply must wait. Do not be discouraged because you are not achieving what you want. Don't let this push you off course. You must wait a little until the time is ripe. One should always be patient and wait, and wait, and wait, until Hashem looks down from on high and he sees you. Yeah. So, in fact, part of the tenacity is the patience. You guys see the connection? You're tenacious in your patience. Because a person who's not tenacious in being patient, he's never going to get to that day that Hashem sees him.
But Hashem sees everything.
I know, but we learned there's like different levels of Hashem seeing, so to speak. The level of seeing that you need is dependent on your actions. Whatever, it was a deep lesson. It's for another time. But to get him to see you the way you want him to see you, on your good hair day, takes time. Or your no hair day, takes patience. So he's going to say now this contradiction that we're dealing with is further aggravated by the fact that we consider in certain places where Rav Natan writes that we must ceaselessly pursue a spiritual goal in whatever area it might be, while elsewhere Rabbi Nachman said that even in praying to Hashem for something one genuinely needs, there are times when one must desist. So again, you have another contradiction. Which one is it? Rav Natan says you can never give up on it. And Rav Nachman says sometimes even for a spiritual thing, you're going to have to relax. You're not going to be able to continue to pray for it. However, he says these are a contradiction only if we assume that they're all speaking about the same situation. If, on the other hand, we view them as strategies that apply to different circumstances, we can see that they're equally valid at different times. Meaning, sometimes you can never give up. And sometimes you have to be patient and wait. So look,
How do you know when you have?
how do you know when? The answer is he boarded it.
That's it?
Sometimes you don't give up. Sometimes you have to be patient.
Sometimes you have to be relentless in your active pursuit of a goal, and sometimes you have to see that Hashem is not giving it to you, and you need to wait.
But nevertheless, you still gotta do the Hebrew.
So the question is, it sounds like it's a contradiction, right? So we're saying that in fact it's just sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that. And the question is, when is it this and when is it that? So Rav Kramer says, at this point in time, you're going to have to synthesize your mind and your heart, and you're going to have to receive a lot of divine assistance to know when and where.
That's why you need time.
Right, that's why you need something. That's why you need something. Okay? So now he says like this. A person needs tremendous determination to be strong and courageous. That you hold yourself. And you maintain your position, even if they cause you to fall, meaning these negative forces. Even if they do cause you to fall, you have a bad day, you feel sad, you feel angry, you feel jealous, you feel lustful, you feel whatever. You're fell, okay? Because he says there are times where they are going to cause you to fall, and you're not going to avoid this. Nevertheless, it is incumbent upon a person to do his part. Meaning, do whatever you can in your service of Hashem and not to fall entirely. You know what he's saying? Meaning you fell. Okay, so you fell in the Avera, you fell in the Taiva, you fell in the act, whatever it is. But don't let yourself to fall entirely, meaning depression. This is because one must surely experience all of these falls, all of these descents, all of these confusions before entering into the gate of Kedusha. You can't avoid these falls. You can't avoid these descents. You can't avoid these confusions. You must go through them. And he says the true tzaddikim, they all underwent this. Every single one of them. The Gemara teaches that King David did not deserve to fall victim to the deal with Bathsheba. And that the Jewish people did not deserve to fall victim to the Chet HaEgel.
So why did it happen?
Why? The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, Masechet Avodah Zarah, it was only that Hashem caused this to happen. Daniel, don't kill me. It is only that Hashem caused them to fall. Why? So it says to teach that everyone can do tshuva. Meaning, we have to learn individually that no matter how much you fall and no matter how high you were before you fell, meaning you're the king of all the Jewish people, you could still do tshuva. Meaning only David could teach everybody to do this because he had attained the highest level. And therefore, if he falls to the lowest place and gets back up, that means that everybody who ever lives can do it as well. And we learn the same thing from the Jewish people, that we got to the highest place. It was like before Adam Rishon sinned, and we fell with the golden calf to teach the Jewish people in the future that Hashem knew would fail so that we would be able to get back up.
This is the dopest story ever.
So why the killing of the...
I don't know. I'm just
the
talking.
golden calf?
I know. I think there's.
The whole generation.
I got
except
it.
for our own.
Yes, it's hard to reconcile the fact that that whole generation died out. Hashem was obviously very upset. Yet we're saying the Gemara says clearly Hashem caused them. So I don't know. It's difficult.
But caused it. Do you think it's
So
like,
part
that's injustice?
of being Jewish is accepting different levels of reality. On the one hand, this is true, and at the same time, this is also true.
Right, but if it contradicts,
Seemingly,
okay, seemingly,
it's called a paradox.
It contradicts the Torah.
Hashem calls people to die. It happens all the time.
No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, why are they getting punished for the sin if Hashem caused them to fall?
They come back and get rid
Whatever it is, it's a difficult concept to understand. But we have to. What he's trying to bring out with this Gemara is that we see that falls are necessary. regardless how you look at it. These falls are necessary. Hashem causes these falls because the falls are actually bringing close. Because in truth, doing tshuva is higher than being a tzaddik. Right? Like the Gemara says that the Baal Tshuva and the tzaddik, if you put them in the same place, the tzaddik can't stand in the same place as the Baal Tshuva. Because tshuva is actually higher. So in fact, even through David's fall, it brought him to a higher place. And that's what Rav Nachman taught earlier, that all falling is really rising. That all being taken away is really being brought close. And he says, and no, an individual can already be at the entrance to Kedusha, meaning he's literally at the entrance. He had worked on himself for days or for weeks or for years, and he's literally at the entrance. And he doesn't know, and he can turn back on account of all of these issues.
It's the worst 30 years.
Yeah? It's like the Lost Princess. Like the Viceroy. Every single time, every year, he's working at it, he's almost there, he's about to get into the gates of Kedusha, and then whoop! He drinks, he eats, he sleeps, whatever he's doing. Alternatively, he says, when he gets close to the entrance, besides the fact that he could get so close and then lose it, he says, what is it? He says, maybe specifically Dafka, it is when he gets close that he loses it. Why? Because Satan, as soon as he sees that a Jew is literally standing at the gate of God, he overwhelms him with unbelievable and awesome power. That Hashem should spare us, and he doesn't allow him through the entrance. And on account of this, he turns back, chas v'shalom. This could be years. I mean, yeah, we see stories of it. Even famous Jewish people that we know that became Baal Tshuva, and they seem to be doing very, very well and becoming very, very elevated spiritually, and just next day, none, done, gone. For such is the way of Satan. When he sees that a person is getting close, very close to the gates of Kedusha, and he's about to enter, he then mounts a very, very powerful assault against him. Accordingly, one needs unbelievable encouragement to counter this. Tonight is Moshe Rabbeinu's yahrzeit, so it's very fitting, and his birthday. So it's very fitting that, it's also my mother's birthday. So it's very fitting that we teach this lesson, and the schut of our Moshe. And so we heard from a true tzaddik who said, listen to the quote, had anyone, no matter whom, told me when I first began serving Hashem, brother, be strong and hold on, I would have run and been very quick to serving Hashem, meaning I wouldn't have paid attention to any of my problems in my life. Because I would have known you have to do this. And you just go, and you don't think about it, you don't pay attention, you just keep moving. So who is this very great tzaddik that Rav Nachman speaking about? Himself. There's a tradition passed down in Breslov that Rav Nachman used to say, you guys think I ended up becoming very great, right? He said, you don't even know what I could have been if I had one person who told me, you're doing good, keep it up. He said, I never had one person told me, stay strong, you're going to make it. He said, if I had one chizik from one person in my life, I would have been much bigger. So, can you imagine? Yes, it is.
Wow, that just broke me out what you just said.
What do you mean?
No one else can tell you that. At least.
You should, you have to. That's what Rav Nachman's saying, you tell yourself.
But if someone else told him that, meaning if someone else looked at his good, it would have brought him back to Teshuvah, which is a place where the tzaddik doesn't stand. It's a form of compassion. It's like, no one's.
Yeah, it's
not
that's what we're saying.
Hospitality. Like,
right.
No one's gonna say, "Hey, I need this."
Right.
Like, you have to do it for yourself.
Right.
Good job.
Right. Right.
People don't show that they're right.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because the only way you can kind of make it in life is if you put on a strong face and you just go, and then at the same time when you do that, nobody realizes you're in pain because you're doing that, and then nobody can tell you
that makes it harder to go.
And that's why Hibodedut is so important. That every morning that you get up, you encourage yourself and you say, you got to start over again today. You got to give it your best today. You got to do this. I do this every day. If you don't do this every day, you're done. If you're doing this, if you want to go be like a you know, I pray 3 times a day and I look Jewish and I act Jewish and really am just like not connected at all. So you might not have to go through all this stuff. But if you want to be the real deal, you're going to have to strengthen yourself every single day. You have to talk to Hashem every day, ask for help every single day. Okay? So he says like this. Yeah. But he's making a deeper point. He's trying to teach something. That his students, his followers, that in the future, they need to mechazik each other all the time. Don't think that like because a guy looks like he's doing it or he's stagging, mechazik him. Don't think because you're struggling yourself and you see another guy, you think, oh, who's me that I should? No, you got to give him a good word. You don't know what that word's gonna do. Chizik.
Where do you draw the line with flattery?
No, it's not flattery. Chizik is not flattery. Flattery is, wow, you look mighty skinny today. But you don't. You're like 500 pounds overweight. No, I'm just saying. Yeah, that's flattery. You're being flattered.
You can flatter me all you like.
The key is, listen, the key is to be able to find the good. Once you can find the good, it's not flattery anymore. Obviously, if you can't find it and you make it up, that's flattery. Like, for instance, I'll tell you. I was going through a tremendously deep, dark, depressive episode, and I was barely holding on. Barely holding on. No, like a few years ago. And I remember it was just like I was like hitting like this, like I just couldn't take it anymore, and I was in shul on Shabbat, and I was like just a mess. I was crying all day and sad and standing there, and then all of a sudden, after I'm done praying, I get a hug from somebody from behind. He just squeezes me, and I looked and I turned around. It was Benny, and I didn't know Benny then. This Benny. I didn't know who he was. I never saw him. And he had a talis on because he always prays with a talis at night. And he wrapped around me like this, and he told me, "I love you. You're a tzaddik." And he doesn't know how much I needed to hear that.
I didn't see it.
Just one word, that kept me going. And I'm sure Benny's done this to a million people, and I'm sure he doesn't know how much.
I'm sure I touched it. That's what the law says. My brother had a similar situation. He was at his football.
Yeah.
He was thinking about something. Then my father came over and turned him again like that. It was exactly a similar situation.
Yeah. It happens more often than you think. So it's very, very important that you yourself mechazik yourself and that you do it for others as well. It's a very big thing. Rav Nachman speaks often about the importance of having good friends. Rarely do you hear rabbis speak about it, even though we know it's important to have friends. But Rav Nachman says you need good friends to get through this. You're going to need friends. Not just friends who are doing it with you, meaning friends who are also trying to run this ladder. Yeah, people who are trying to cross the narrow bridge with you. Therefore, whoever wants to go into the service of Hashem, he must remember what I'm saying well. Then, with the accruement of days and years, with Hashem's help, you are surely going to enter into the gates of Kedusha. So it's important you hear this part. Meaning, it sounds like this whole time, okay, days and years, but when does it end? Does it ever end? He says 100%. If you do not give up, after a certain amount of time, you will enter into those gates because Hashem has tremendous empathy for you and He wants you so bad. He wants you very, very, very much. He wants you very much. And He says, and no, each time that you detach and shift yourself just a bit from materialism, that's not just the physical, but also your lusts, your taivas, everything. You just, a little movement, a little change. He says, what happens is all these little movements and changes and good thoughts, they all accumulate and combine and they bind together and they come to your aid at a time of need. Every single time that you have a good intention or a good deed or a good movement, just to, I want to, you actually create a malach. And at the time that you really need help, all of these malachim that you created all of these years that you felt you weren't doing anything, they all come to your aid and save you. It's a very deep thing he's saying right now. And then he says, Vidan, you should know. The most famous line in Likutei Mohoran. You ready? Shadam sarich lavor al gesher tsar me'od me'od. That every person needs to pass through a very, very narrow bridge. Va'klal va'ikar. And the rule and the essence is shelo yipahed klal. You shouldn't be afraid at all. You shouldn't be afraid at all. Shouldn't be afraid at all.
It's nice when you hear it and like, I'm ready. And then when the time comes, it's like,
Why doesn't it say you shouldn't be afraid to fall?
No, not to fall. You shouldn't be afraid at all.
Yeah, I heard it. So,
Okay.
why not to be afraid of fall? Because it's inevitable.
Inevitable, yeah, you have to. But he's saying more than that.
Not to be afraid.
He's saying not to be afraid, period, because these things are just, they're bringing you closer. You don't know that all of the difficulties are bringing you closer. Therefore, there's no reason to be scared of them. The reason why we're afraid of that pain and those difficulties and those challenges is because we think we're getting knocked off target. But if you realize they're knocking you on target, you wouldn't be afraid of them. So he's saying you shouldn't be afraid of this at all. And Rav Nachman and Rav Natan, they said that the greatest obstacles are in your own mind. It's just your own fears about life. If you were able to just push it aside and just move, do what's the truth and just keep moving, you're going to get there. It's just the fear. It could kill you. It stop you completely. And he says, Vidan, you should know. Listen to what he says, very interesting. Sheyesh Ilan, there's a tree. And on this tree, there's leaves that grow. And with each leaf, taking 100 years to mature. There's actually a tree like this. In Europe, when it was in Ukraine, there was a tree like this. Now it's interesting because the Torah does compare a tree to man. So I'm sure that there's a connection here. He says this tree, which is found in the orchards of the nobility, meaning only the richest people had trees like this. It was called in their language 100 years. This is called the 100 years tree. That everything on the tree took 100 years to grow. But listen to what he says, very interesting. And most likely, when it grows for 100 years, it endures what it endures. Meaning, we know that as the tree is doing that for 100 years, it's actually becoming very, very dried out and worn out, and it looks like it's dying, similar to a seed in the ground, after 100 years. And he says, then afterwards, at the end of 100 years, in one moment, it emits a blast. It actually does, like a sound pops out of the tree, similar to a cannon. It's a real thing. Come on. Don't look for the tree. In its final winter, the 100 years tree is extremely dry and brittle, meaning in the last year of its 100 years, it looks like its mom is like it's already died. And it seems incapable of ever returning to its vitality, to its life. But with the arrival of spring in that one moment, the tree comes back to life. And the deeply stored life force, meaning that as the tree was dying on the outside, the life inside the tree was growing tremendously. And this is actually what happens to all of us. And the Zohar says this explicitly, that when Hashem wants to bring a Jew close to him, many times he breaks his outside.
Right. He fiddles him until the inside is ready.
And then the inside becomes very, very strong until it just can't take it anymore and it breaks out. And then it heals the outside as well. So he says this is what happens with the tree. The deeply stored life force shooting through its branches and leaves actually emitted a loud sound, like a cannon blast. And the Torah compares us to a tree. When years of obstacles and difficulties make it seem that a person in the service of Hashem is never gonna spring back to life, he must never despair, because even if his lack of accomplishment has left him dry and brittle like a 100 years tree, he must believe he has a deep store of vitality and strength that can bring him to joy and pride to Hashem. In one moment.
Those are the angels he created that comes to help him.
Yeah.
So it's all stored up there.
It's all stored up there until it just there's not room to hold it anymore, and boom, explosion.
There's a certain threshold that every person goes through.
Yeah.
That whenever they reach quote unquote rock bottom, that's whenever that threshold just shatters.
Pops through. That's right.
I guess it needs that to pop through.
Right.
If you don't have that rock bottom,
Right.
a good thing. It's a very
That's what he's saying, that all of the being turned away is really being brought closer. It's all really being brought closer. And he says, now it's fitting, based on what we just said, to go with what's taught in the lesson of Zamra. And that is to seek and search to find in oneself any merit or good point at all. And with that little bit of good that you find in yourself, you should be happy and you should encourage yourself. He should not desert his place, even if he has fallen into what he has fallen. No, notwithstanding, he should encourage himself with any modicum of good he finds in himself, until he merits returning to Hashem through this, and he turns all of his averot into mitzvot. Remember too what the Baal Shem Tov went through at the sea when the Satan instigated at him. This is a very famous story amongst the Hasidim, all Hasidim, and specifically Breslovers tell this story at Pesach, at the end of Pesach every year, which is that the Baal Shem Tov was at sea with his student. He was going to Eretz Yisrael. He had a similar story to Rabbi Nachman, traveling to the land of Israel and going through all these difficulties to get there. And as he was on his way to the land, he had to turn off onto an island, and they got abducted by cannibals, literally. And all the people who were on the boat with him were eaten by these cannibals. And the Baal Shem Tov was with his student, and his student said to him, "You're the freaking Baal Shem Tov. Like, just do some yichudim and knock these guys out. Let's go." And he said, "I don't know what happened. I don't remember any of the Torah I ever learned. I don't remember anything." I said, "Say anything, please. Anything you say." He goes, Mom, I don't remember the Hebrew alphabet." He didn't remember anything. He didn't remember anything.
Why?
So wait. So then the Baal Shem Tov said to his student, do you know any Torah? Do you remember anything? He's like, Aleph, Bet, he just starts saying the Hebrew alphabet. And after every letter, the Baal Shem Tov would repeat the letter. He said Aleph, he repeated Aleph. He said Bet, he repeated Bet. He said Gim, until they got through the whole thing. And then slowly but surely, the Baal Shem Tov remembered everything that he knew. So what's the point of the story? This is the whole essence of a Zamra. He forgot all the good, because the good in Torah is synonymous. He found one letter, one little modicum of good, and it helped him remember all of the rest. It brought back the whole thing in Tshuva, and obviously he survived in X, Y, and Z. So this is the whole essence of a Zamra.
Who's that student? It's one spark that can start the whole time.
That's right. One, his name was Reb Tzvi, Hirsch Sofer. Remember, two, he says, understand from this the extent to which you must encourage yourself and that you may never give up on yourself, chas v'shalom. And he says, what's the main thing? Ha'ikar liyot b'simcha tamid. The main thing is that you're happy always. V'yisamech atzmo b'chol ma she'uchol. That you make yourself happy through whatever means is necessary. V'afilu al yedei milei shtuta. Even through stupidity and foolishness. Lasot atzmo kishotev lasot inyei shtut. Even if you have to go out like a fool, doing silly and comical things, such as kafitzu, jumping, rikudim, and dancing. Kedei levo l'simcha. If this brings you to simcha, shehu davar gadol me'od. You have to do this. Because you have to be happy. Because mamish, the sitra achra is sadness. When I do my hippolyte in the middle, if I'm like not feeling it or whatever, I'll just stop in the middle and I'll just start singing and dancing and screaming, whatever it takes. When you really understand that it's not that it's bad to be sad or that it's damaging to be sad, but that sadness is evil incarnate. Yeah. You'll do whatever you can to stay away. It's like Isur. It's not like I'm not gonna eat tray food. I'm not gonna break Shabbat. It's like, how can I get sad? I'm not saying it's the same thing. You can't let yourself get sad. You have to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
What if God did a grieving sort of situation?
That's not the sadness.
I know it's brokenhearted, but like I feel it, but you can't be happy when you're brokenhearted, no?
So that brokenheartedness is not coming from despair. Sadness comes from despair. Brokenheartedness comes from pain. It's different things. When somebody passes away, you have pain. That's normal, and that's appreciated. But despair comes from don't believe that it's going to work out for the best. You don't believe there's no hope for the future.
I get the distinction.
Okay.
However, how do you keep up simcha all the time in times where you are in pain and or brokenheartedness?
Say to yourself, everything is from Hashem. Baruch and Emet. Everything is for the best.
Can you
Everything.
feel happiness at the same time you're brokenhearted?
If you need to in order not to feel sad, Rav Nachman says you have to do it. You can't feel sad regardless of
This
what.
is a deeper aspect to Gamzu Tova.
Yeah?
Because what is Gamzu Tova? This is good.
Right.
And the good helps you to be besimcha.
Yeah.
Helps you to do teshuva. Helps
Sure.
you to come.
100%. Yeah? There you go. Okay? This is the lesson. This is a lesson for the ages. You should take this lesson and stick it in your pocket, right next to a
We
Zamar.
should do so.